What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the most must-listen sports podcast on the internet. Welcome back to Off the Bench. Brandon Carney alongside Madi Kroll. Madi, the Super Bowl is in our rear view mirror. The season flew by. Man, I can't believe we're here. I really can't. We're like 15, 16, I don't know, episodes into Off the Bench at this point, and now we've got our first ever Super Bowl post-show. How you feeling?
I feel the seasonal depression has already kicked in. I don't have a game to look forward to this week. But we've already got some drama on Twitter today. So we're recording on Tuesday today, and we've gotten some football drama, which is, I guess, going to keep us entertained this whole offseason.
Yes, so recording this on Valentine's Day. Obviously, all of you listening to this it'll be the day after Valentine's Day, so happy belated Valentine's Day. But yes, Juju Smith-Schuster not showing any love for the Eagles or for A.J. Brown, tweeting at him. What did he say? He's making fun of him for the holding call. So he posted a Valentine's card that said, I'll hold you, something to that effect. And it was a picture of James Bradbury. A.J. Brown basically came back at him and said, yeah, well, you got carried and, Mahomes revived your career and whatever. Congrats on the ring. And then Juju, hit him back kind of half-heartedly because I think he knew he got a little bit roasted and was like, glad you got that off your chest, bro. So we've already got beef going on. I feel like Juju should maybe stay a little quiet. He was not exactly the most important player on the Chiefs this year, and the most relevant thing he did in that Super Bowl game was get held. 7 catches, 53 yards, not bad, but nothing that's going to set the world on fire either. So maybe
and that
he
was
should
his
relax.
best game. That was my thing is you had one good game, and that's how you handle yourself afterwards. It's just ridiculous.
Juju's been a Super Bowl winner for less than 48 hours, and the success is already going to his head. I mean, this is exactly what we expect out of the guy who's more known for making TikToks than he is for his play on the field outside of his rookie and sophomore years with the Steelers. So it is what it is on Juju, but let's get to the game itself. So watch the whole game. Tale of two halves, really. The Eagles dominated the first half. The Eagles could have been up at least 3 scores if not for a play where Jalen essentially just dropped the ball. I understand he basically had the fear of God in his heart by staring Nick Bolton in the face, which caused him to drop it. But it was self-inflicted. Dropped the ball. Nick Bolton returned it for a touchdown, made the game much closer than it needed to be because otherwise the Eagles were running the Chiefs up and down the field. They even had another possession that, who knows, could have ended in a score, but it was their second drive that was negated by a holding penalty that got them just off to a rough start and kind of neutered that drive. But yeah, the Eagles dominated in the first half. Jalen Hurts overall played incredible, 27 for 38, 304 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, no interceptions, and then on the ground, really where his money was made, 15 carries, 70 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, I think, at least in this game, dispelled any notion that he's not one of the game's top quarterbacks. I mean, I don't know how you have a top 5 or at least top 6, 7 without Jalen Hurts in it. I feel like the doubters need to be gone at this point. But first half,
and nobody mentioned the shoulder injury going up into this game. It's like he played so well the 2 weeks before that everybody just didn't even think about it.
Right.
So that's one thing that I think that he should be credited for because he looked like he had no injury at all.
Absolutely. And I mean, for a game where, so much was made of Patrick Mahomes' ankle injury, seemed like people forgot that Jalen Hurts is dealing with an injury of his own just because he wasn't wincing every 5 seconds, which understandable for Mahomes. I'm sure it was a very painful injury, but Jalen just kind of, made us forget that he was hurt with not only his lack of reaction to any pain he was feeling, but how he played overall. One of the funniest aspects of this game, in my opinion, was just the Eagles QB sneaks that I wanted to touch on. I have never seen a more unstoppable play in my life. And this is coming from a Patriots fan who's grown up hearing that, Tom Brady on 4th and 1 or whatever, needing a yard going for the sneak. Tom Brady's sneaks were the most unstoppable thing I've ever seen. Well, he's been jumped by Jalen Hurts here with Eagles QB sneaks because that's good for 2 or 3 if you want it every time, and it's fascinating. I could not believe. I think they got it to work 4 times, 5 times in that game. Yes. It was absurd.
And the offensive line is great. You give them that credit. But even A.J. Brown, I think it was the last QB sneak that we saw from them, was literally shoving him, got him an extra yard just by himself. That was crazy.
That's the thing. As a unit, it's just an incredible play. It's not just Jalen, but that whole unit making sure they get him across the line every time. If the Eagles need a yard or 2, good luck. Truly good luck. And then, so in the second half, just a completely different game. The Eagles defense looked worse than it has all year, but honestly, I guess that's just what happens when you go up against an elite head coach and elite quarterback. Sometimes it doesn't matter what kind of defense you have, and we saw the worst they've played because it was the best offense that they've played all year. No sacks, which credit to Patrick Mahomes as well for evading some of those potential sacks. Great awareness all night. And then the Eagles defense, I think the most notable shortcoming that they had other than the lack of pressure was just getting beat on those fake motions for touchdowns. I mean, the first time, I get it. It's a Great play design. I understand why you'd get fooled by that. Darius Slay is trying to pass off coverage for Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney says, screw that, we're snapping the ball, cuts back, wide open. Then it worked again. Basically the same play, flipped the field for Sky Moore. Just tough. I mean, the Chiefs had their way with the Eagles defense in the second half, and it ultimately led to a Chiefs Super Bowl win. And I don't know, it wasn't what I was expecting out of the Eagles defense in this one.
Yeah, I will say, I know that we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I do think that the field had a lot to do with things. If you don't have the right environment, it's really hard for those defensive linemen to get home. It's hard for them to get their footing at all. And when you talk about a snap and a defensive lineman that has to rush, you have to be off the ball as quickly as possible. And if you don't have your footing, it's hard. It just is. And it changes the way the defense rolls the whole time. What was interesting to me is the fact that those motions you were talking about, the Chiefs didn't implement that until the second half. It was almost like Mahomes re-injuring that ankle or whatever happened, that scare that they had right before half, changed the way they game planned for the second half. The Eagles didn't answer to that at all. So that's really, I think that was probably the biggest momentum shift in the game, was that Patrick Mahomes injury, because it completely changed the way the Chiefs came out and played the second half of the game. They were doing as many motion sweeps as they could to be able to relieve Patrick, is exactly what they did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, great play design that just led to the Chiefs offense being completely unstoppable in that half. And you mentioned the field. We might as well talk about that while we're on the subject. So the field conditions, the NFL spent $800,000 and 2 years developing this grass, whatever. And it was, I think, the worst field we've seen all season outside of maybe week 1 where the 49ers played the Bears because there was torrential rain. Well, guess what? There was no weather in this game. So as slippery as this was, it's awful. Isaiah Pacheco's slipping on a celebration, let alone these guys trying to get in and out of breaks. I mean, it was truly awful. I actually wrote down, so the NFL tried to kind of tout, before the game, how great this field was going to be. So for those of you wondering, the turf is Tahoma 31, and it's among the newer breeds of grass that have been developed with the funding of the United States Golf Association. It's a mix of 2 types of Bermuda grasses and ryegrass developed at Oklahoma State under the watchful eye of Dr. Yankee Wu. He started the process of creating it in 2006 when he crossed China Bermuda grass with African Bermuda grass. See, that's really, really strong thinking there. A year later, the seeds were harvested and the grass was tested and studied all over the country until 2018. Maybe we should have studied until 2019, 2020, go past 2023 and not use it ever, because that was horrific. It wasn't the biggest factor of the game, I don't think. I mean, there was a lot more that went into it, but it did make it less enjoyable, less than what it could have been. You've got all these dynamic playmakers who they feel like they can cut the way that they're used to, and it just took away from the game. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know a lot of people were going off and saying it doesn't make a difference, but when you see sports broadcasters, reporters that are on the sidelines slipping, they're used to that, you know what I mean? And I think that when you're running at full speed, it does make a difference. But it was wild to me whenever I was watching people on camera, like jerking and slipping. It was insane. We knew that it was going to be trouble before the game even started.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just lucky we escaped the game without any major injuries, because Jake Elliott, especially on the kickoff, looked like he could have snapped his ankle right in half. And luckily he has the dexterity in his ankles to withstand that, apparently, because it looked like there should have been some sort of injury there. But he didn't get hurt, neither did any other player, thankfully. But it was definitely a recipe for disaster. One of the other things that may have taken away from the quality of this game that, of course, we have to touch on is the holding call at the end of the game. So you have a holding call on James Bradbury on Juju Smith-Schuster. Madi, we'll just get right into it. Do you agree or disagree with the call? How do you feel about it?
Here's my stance on the call. He had a blatant hold in the first half that they didn't call. And so when you go into the second half, when you barely brush off on somebody, you expect that not to be called, right? And so I think that if you're going to call things like that, then you need to be consistent and call the entire game. You can't not call things in the first half and then call things in the second half. That's where my frustration came from. But technically, it was a hold.
Yeah, I completely agree. But that's the thing. That's where people are getting caught up, right? Is like the holds, and most penalties are judgment calls. It's whether the refs want to call them or not, right? And that's where this comes into play. You haven't had a hold all night, and then you have a hold that, yes, you can see the screenshots of the jersey tug. Obviously, he did grab him. Did it impede Juju's speed all that much? I don't think so. Was Juju getting to that ball anyway? No. I just don't think you make that call at the end of that game if you haven't made it leading up. And it, again, hurts the credibility of the league because you've got all of these people, jokingly or not, saying that the league is rigged. I mean, how else? What's the best way to rig a game, Maddie? Not make any sort of calls pushing one way or the other until the very end. That's the best way to do it because it's not as obvious. But this was, and I don't think they're rigging the game or anything, but it's just hurting people's perception and integrity of the game, and I think it sucks. I don't think you make that call at the end, even if it is the right call, because if it was the right call, make the right call throughout the game. Do it consistently.
Be consistent. And that's what we've seen. We've had this complaint the entire season in big games. They haven't been consistent with their calls, and that's all. I think that's all the football community wants is for them to be consistent.
Yeah, I would agree, and just kind of soured the ending of what was a really, really good game. Ultimately, I don't think people are going to remember the game for this, but it could have been such a much more memorable game. You could have had the Eagles going up the field with 1:45 left, down by 3, and see what happens. But instead, we didn't get that. We got to run out the clock, field goal by Butker, Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Jalen tries a half-hearted Hail Mary to make something happen, and it doesn't work. So it just sucks, but it's not the reason that the Chiefs won.
No, definitely not. I think that I was actually more upset with the Devontae Smith callback. I felt like that was a catch. And if it wasn't a catch, then we need to start talking about clarifying what exactly a catch is and what it is not.
I would agree. Devonta Smith been at the forefront of a few is it a catch, is it not a catch instances this playoffs, and just another one in the Super Bowl. But look, overall, I think people will look back favorably on this Super Bowl. It was a great high-scoring game between two of the best teams, the two best teams in the league. They both came in as the 1 seeds and showed exactly why. Two of the best quarterbacks in the league. And Patrick Mahomes finally broke that streak of MVP quarterbacks 0-9 in their previous 9 Super Bowl appearances. Mahomes breaking that curse. So future MVPs who make the Super Bowl, you can thank Patrick because now people won't be talking about that anymore. Or maybe they'll just say 1-9. Who knows? One thing we do have to talk about outside of football, real quick. How about that halftime show? How about Rihanna? Huh?
Man, it looked like Rihanna and the Jet Puffs out there.
Oh no, I have some of that. I have some of that in my cabinet actually.
Great stuff. No, I thought that she was great. I mean, she got out there pregnant. Everybody was shocked by that. I was a little nervous going into it because the group I was watching with, we had a guy who was on the sideline with Fox and was like, Rihanna's not here. It was like 3 minutes before she was supposed to go on. She was late. She wasn't there. And so I was a little nervous she wasn't going to make it, but I thought that she did well. It wasn't my favorite halftime show, but it was entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it reminded me personally of just how many hits she has because she just kept going and going and going. I guess just because she hasn't released music in so long that I kind of forgot. But I'm like, man, those are just consistently bangers. Didn't even play Disturbia, which I thought would be the first song she ripped off with, and she didn't even play it.
Too. I thought that it had to be in there.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But look, overall, musically, one of my favorite halftime shows just because they were a lot of songs that I liked and I thought it was well done. But yeah, overall, very solid halftime show. You had a lot of people saying that it was a Rihanna concert with a football game in the middle, and to those people, okay, but no, it was a solid.
Too good of a game to say that.
Yeah, it was a very, very solid halftime show. So I just wanted to give some props to Rihanna and congratulations on the new pregnancy as well. That was announced, right after the Super Bowl because nobody knew going in except I assume those close to her. The Chiefs now.
That baby has a lot to live up to now, though.
Yeah.
I mean, performed its first Super Bowl before it's even born.
That is true. I mean, that baby's going to have been on more Super Bowl fields than Dak Prescott by the time it's all said and done. So, all right, the Chiefs now. 2-time Super Bowl champions under Mahomes and Andy Reid. I think the Chiefs are officially the new Patriots. Not in terms of longevity or anything like that. Obviously, we're not at that point yet. But just in terms of being the big bad villain at the top of the food chain that everyone is going to be coming after, there's no mistaking now that it is the Kansas City Chiefs. We knew, well before this that Patrick Mahomes was the best quarterback in the league. We knew that the Chiefs were a threat. But now this is the team that you're going to have to plan for and be like, are we building our team so that we can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, whether it's in the Super Bowl or, in the AFC playoffs, trying to get there. Maddie, what do you think about the Chiefs and this dynasty that appears to be being built?
I think you're dead on with that analysis. I mean, we watched the Bills do that last year. The Bills, the only reason they signed Von Miller was for Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Unfortunately, Von didn't make it there, but that's the reason why he was signed. So we've already seen that happen. But the the crazy thing is Patrick Mahomes is coming into himself. And the team has started to pull away from that hero ball that they were playing with it. Like last year, they did this. The year before, they even did it. So they're starting to pull away and actually get their weapons involved. They utilized their run game, which was phenomenal. I don't know how many times we have to say you have the number one run blocking offensive line in the league, which is crazy to talk about when everybody was gun ho on the Eagles offensive line, which is phenomenal. But the Chiefs offensive line is one of the best with run blocking, and they don't utilize it. So the fact that they were able to develop that portion of the game is a game changer within itself. I think that was kind of a wake up call for them. And that's going to be scary for the rest of the AFC next year.
Yeah, I think it's just frightening with this team. You know, Andy Reid is sticking around. There were some rumors of would he retire after the game or not. He said he's not going to do that. And just watching the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year when, look, as much as I wanted to argue with Travis Kelce after the game when he said, no one picked us to get here, he was right. This is not like Georgia football saying that no one believed in them when they were the 1 seed all year and everyone knew they were the best team. It's true. Nobody really thought the Chiefs were going to do anything this year. No, a lot of people didn't think they were going to win their own division, me included. And they ended up winning their division, winning the Super Bowl with kind of a mishmash at wide receiver, but it doesn't matter because you have Patrick Mahomes and you built these other pieces around him. So very scary for the rest of the NFL as long as Mahomes and Reid and Kelce are a trio, or at the very least, as long as Mahomes and Reid are a duo. My question now, because this talk is picking up and there were some rumblings even before this year just because of how well he's played and what we've seen from him to this point in his career, has Patrick Mahomes entered the GOAT conversation? And if not, when do you think he does? What more does he have to do? In my opinion, like, you just need that longevity. I don't even know that he needs to get the 7 rings that Brady does, because I don't personally view GOAT as like strictly a ring accomplishment. But do you think Mahomes is in the conversation? And if not, what does he have to do to get there?
I think he has to be in the conversation. I think that you're always going to have the Tom Brady truthers. Of course, you know, when you win that many rings, it's just like the Michael Jordan situation. It's hard to outlive that when you have that ground to stand on. But when you look at statistically what he's done, he's already surpassed Tom Brady outside of the Super Bowl wins. Like, he's already surpassed the yardage, rushing yards, passing yards, everything. He's exceeded that. And so now you have somebody who won MVP and then won Super Bowl MVP. I just kind of feel like you have to have him in the conversation. There's just no way that you can at this point.
Yeah, I think statistically, if Mahomes keeps up this pace, he's absolutely, going to be at that. He may end up going down as the GOAT. As of right now, it's so hard to say because, like, if he retired tomorrow, is he in the GOAT conversation? I don't know. It's like you have these guys who have incredible peak seasons, and you can acknowledge that. But being the greatest of all time really does need to come with that longevity. So I think if Mahomes goes until he's, let's say 34, 35 at least, and is very productive as he has been, and maybe snags 1 or 2 more rings, I feel like he'll absolutely be considered in the minds of a lot of people as the greatest quarterback of all time, just because not only will he, sort of be approaching the statistical accomplishments of Tom Brady, but he will have done it much flashier than Brady ever did and just have kind of a greater skill set than I think Brady did. Brady, look, I'm a Patriots fan. I'm not going to deny this, that I think Brady is the greatest of all time still, and that it's going to take a bit for someone to pass him. But Brady's whole shtick, his whole career, was just that he analyzed the game so incessantly well that regardless of any physical limitations that he may have, even though he did have a strong arm, but he wasn't a mobile guy, that he was just able to overcome any odds possible because he saw the game better than you did. But Patrick Mahomes, he's kind of getting to that point, and he has those physical traits. So that's where you get into, can Patrick Mahomes pass him? I'm not putting him over him yet. Some people are, even some people whose opinions I very much respect in the NFL media world. I'm not putting Mahomes over Brady yet, but I think if Mahomes just plays reasonably well into his mid-30s, I mean, he's on that trajectory. He is, which is crazy. It's crazy because you saw Joe Montana, who was allegedly a little upset that Tom Brady has, kind of unanimously passed him in the GOAT conversation. Joe Montana is about to be 3rd in a few years if we keep going. So crazy what Mahomes has done to this point.
I agree. And I will say that this Super Bowl was the first time that we've seen him consistently stay calm inside the pocket and composed throughout an entire game. Normally you see him scrambling and it's almost like he overthinks. This was the first game that we saw him have that calmness. And that's exactly what made Tom Brady Brady. No matter what point he was at in the game, no matter how much they were losing by, as long as Tom Brady was calm, you knew everything had the potential to be okay in the end for the Patriots. It's exactly what's happening with Patrick Mahomes, at least this past game. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep that into next season.
Yeah, and it'll also be interesting just throughout Mahomes' career because of the incredible quarterback talent that we have in the AFC right now. I mean, Brady, had to deal with plenty himself with Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning. I don't know why I said Rivers before Manning. Don't yell at me. Manning and Rivers and Big Ben and just great quarterbacks in their own right in the AFC for so long. Mahomes has a gauntlet himself with Joe Burrow, and I think Justin Herbert's going to take a big step forward. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, who's in the AFC for now. I think he's just got quite a cast to contend with. So look, if he becomes the GOAT, it will be very, very, very well earned, and it's just going to be exciting to watch him as his career unfolds for the next 7-8 years or more.
It'll also be interesting to see if we have a Belichick-Brady situation in Reid and Mahomes too, because I think that Andy Reid is a big reason why Patrick Mahomes saw success not only in this game but throughout his career.
Sure, and if Andy Reid, if retirement rumors, as minuscule as they may have been, were bubbling up before this Super Bowl, it brings into question, is Andy Reid going to be around 8 years from now when Mahomes is entering his mid-30s, not entering, but well into his mid-30s, So it'll be interesting if he has to undergo a head coaching change down the line. But look, that's down the line. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the now and also the very near future. And what I want to talk about is the Philadelphia Eagles. So we both picked them to win the Super Bowl. They were my Super Bowl pick before the season as well. So I think this season did not surprise any of us, but they ultimately came up short. What do you think they have to do to get over the hump? And can they kind of just run it back from this past season? Like, is it just things didn't break their way? I mean, they only lost by 3 points. What do they have to do? And can they just kind of do what they did this past year?
Well, it's going to be important for them to have everybody come back, right? That offensive line is going to have to come back. That was a huge reason why they were as successful as what they were. I think a healthy Jalen Hurts is going to help tremendously. But as far as how they game plan, they're very well rounded. We're going to have to see what happens with the defensive coordinator situation since they just lost their DC. He obviously went to the Cardinals, we found out today. But I think that they for sure have the potential to be in the Super Bowl next year. It's just going to depend on how they rehab their players and then just how Jalen Hurts continues to improve. I think that there was a couple areas that he looked a little weak on, but I honestly feel like that could have been attributed to the shoulder injury and then even the leg injury he had earlier in the season.
Yeah, I think just marginal improvements are what we're going to be looking for with the Eagles, even if they bring back the exact same cast, just, tightening things up, guys taking steps forward as they get better. Jalen Hurts is a guy who has improved massively every year that he's played football in the public eye. So, I mean, if he can take another step forward, then look out. But him along with their other young players, it's just a matter of getting these guys to each take even just a baby step forward. You were already in the Super Bowl. I feel like people may get lost in the idea of, you lost the Super Bowl, you got to find a way to win it now. It's like, okay, certain things are just almost out of your control at that point. Like, there's a level of randomness when the score is that close that it's like, don't do anything drastically different next year. You got to the Super Bowl and you damn near won it. Just maybe slightly better execution. And even if you have the same execution, if you have a different opponent, things could break differently. So I wouldn't change too much if I'm the Eagles. But like we said, things are going to be out of their control getting changed. They lost both of their coordinators, which this is crazy to me. I mean, not undeserved by any means, but that the Super Bowl winners are basically bringing back their exact same coaching staff. The Super Bowl losers lost both their offensive and defensive coordinator. So you've got Shane Steichen going to the Colts to be their new head coach, Jonathan Gannon to the Cardinals. There's going to be a lot of turnover here, and that's going to be things they have to navigate. The Eagles do have Brian Johnson, quarterbacks coach, who they like a lot.
That's why I'm not as concerned about the offensive coordinator situation.
Yeah, so they like Brian Johnson a lot. I don't think their offense is too big of a concern, but either way, there's going to be a lot of changes going on, and you need to see if you can kind of replicate the success on both sides of the ball that you had this year with new names leading the charge, because it is a wild card when that happens. You really never know, but there's plenty of other teams dealing with that as well. So we will see how that plays out. Looking further ahead, so because we are football addicts and we can't help but do this kind of thing, the favorites to win next year's Super Bowl. So we've got The Chiefs, obviously favored at plus 550. And then in order of the best odds, we've got Chiefs, then 49ers, Bills, Eagles, Bengals, Cowboys, Chargers, Jaguars, Lions, and then the rest of these teams are all tied for the same odds. There's 6 teams here at plus 3,500. Dolphins, Packers, Jets, Rams, Giants, Ravens. That was a mouthful. Madi, what do you make of next year's Super Bowl favorites? And I mean, I think we kind of gave our picks last week for what we thought would be potentially next year's Super Bowl. We're obviously looking super, super far ahead, but I know I have my picks, and I also have some like value picks if you're a bettor for teams I like at lower odds. Does anything jump out to you about these odds right now?
I actually don't have the Bills ranked as high just because I feel like they're not doing what they need to do to make these changes. It almost seems like they feel like, oh, we have Josh Allen, we're going to be okay. And they haven't really hustled. So for me, I have the Bills dropping down significantly. I think the Chiefs are obviously going to be a threat. I think the Chargers are going to come in hot. I think that you said that you were down for the Chargers, but of course, I feel like the Eagles are coming back. 49ers, I think, have very high potential to make it to the Super Bowl next year. And then I think with the new hires with the Dolphins, they've got a good shot coming in.
Yeah, I think my Super Bowl pick last week are way too early Super Bowl picks. I believe I went with Chargers versus Eagles. But real quick, I'm completely with you. I don't know what the Bills have done to warrant being over, at the very least, the Eagles and the Bengals. Yeah. I really don't see that at all. Granted, you get Von Miller back, a lot can change, but I don't really see that one right now. My favorite value picks, though, here, I'm definitely going with both the Dolphins and the Ravens. I tweeted this out a couple days ago. So the Dolphins, this was a team we've said a few times, they were looked at as one of the best teams in the NFL early in the year, and then they fell off largely because of Tua's injury and poor defensive play. Well, they're bringing in Vic Fangio to coach the defense, and assuming, and this is maybe a big assumption, that Tua can stay healthy throughout the year, I don't see how this isn't one of the top 5 teams in the NFL. Vic Fangio coaching that defense and Tua leading what should be basically the same offense as last year, one of the most explosive offenses in the league. So I think if you're going long shot Super Bowl bets, the Dolphins are as good a bet as any. And the other one is the Ravens. Just assuming they bring back Lamar Jackson, if he's gone, this entire point is moot. But if he's back, this is a team that did not show to be much worse than the Bengals and were largely better than the Bengals at times. I mean, they play each other twice in the division every year, occasionally face off in the playoffs like they did this year. And the Ravens held strong with them, I believe, every time, especially in the playoffs, led by Tyler Huntley. So if this Ravens team can just kind of stay on the right track that they're on, if Lamar can get healthy, pray that this knee injury is nothing major, and maybe get him some receivers that aren't Deshaun Jackson and Sammy Watkins. I think the sky's the limit for this Ravens team, and the Ravens were actually one of my favorite Super Bowl picks coming into this past season. They weren't my official Super Bowl pick out of the AFC. I crashed and burned picking the Broncos, but the Ravens were like kind of my second or third team behind the Broncos and the Chargers that I really, really loved coming into this year. And I think they got rid of Greg Roman.
Helps. Yep.
Yeah, got rid of Greg Roman. There. I think that's a big change for them that could be beneficial. And if they just shore up some things, I don't see why they can't be in that Super Bowl mix. So if you're looking for long shot Super Bowl odds, Ravens and Dolphins, I don't see why they should be on the same tier as teams like the Packers and the Jets and the Rams and the Giants. I just feel like they're a little bit above them. So a super early Super Bowl pick is Chargers Eagles, but if you're looking for value, Ravens and Dolphins are the way to go, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
Moving into this offseason. So it is officially off-season, rumored free agency time. I mean, not actually free agency time. That's in about a month. But one guy who is already available is Derek Carr. Derek Carr got officially released by the Raiders today before the $40 million in his contract became guaranteed. Probably a good idea to get rid of him before that happens.
Yeah.
He said that he would not accept a trade to the Saints or anywhere else. It was rumored that there was actually compensation agreed upon for a trade of Derek Carr to the Saints, but Derek Carr did not want to accept that trade. Now he is free to go anywhere he wants. The favorited teams right now for landing Derek Carr, odds-wise, are the Colts, Jets, Bucks, Panthers, Saints, and Commanders. Madi, do any of those teams stand out to you as a best fit for Derek Carr, or what are you thinking about his status right now?
It's hard because if we talk about the teams that are favored right now, I feel like the Colts are going to be the ones that come out just swinging bats trying to pick him up. But the way this whole situation unfolded makes me feel like his agent already has this sealed up, and they're waiting on some type of move, which makes me almost think like, are they waiting to possibly see like what happens with Aaron Rodgers? Is there a possibility Aaron Rodgers ends up in New York? I know that a lot of people have skepticized that. So I honestly have no guess on where Derek Carr is going to end up, but I think it's solidified, at least for his agent. I think that that's the reason why they kind of went this path instead of going a guaranteed trade route. It'll be interesting to see, but I think that he would probably have the best fit with the Colts. I just feel like the Colts are that team that would go out and just risk it all for Derek Carr. They would do whatever they could to get him.
I personally feel like he won't go to the Colts. I feel like
Really?
I feel like the Colts have finally been burned enough by these like middling sort of aging quarterbacks. And granted, Derek Carr's probably the best of the bunch, right? I mean, they've gone through Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett's not old, he's just not that good.
Wentz.
They've gone through those guys the past few years, and it hasn't worked out. I feel like Derek Carr, even though he may be the best of that group, the Colts are sort of positioned here to go after somebody young, whether they trade up in the draft and go after a guy like Bryce Young, who Jim Irsay was raving about today. I don't feel like that's going to do very well for their.
That.
Yeah, so Jim Irsay basically came out and said he really likes that kid from Alabama. Now, that's not going to do very well for their negotiating tactics if they're trying to trade with the Bears. The Bears are just going to be like, hey, your owner loves this guy. Give us 17 first-round picks for him. How about that? So I don't know where that's going to go. But at the very least, I do think that they are going to go young. I think they draft a quarterback somewhere, even if it's just a Will Levis type of guy who I don't know how I feel about him as of now. I feel like the Colts go young. Looking at the teams that he's been linked to, it's been speculated that the Bucs aren't going to be able to afford him based on what Derek Carr is going to ask for. So that one you could probably cross off.
I don't think he'd fit well in that offensive.
Yeah, no, I feel like the Saints might make some sense here. And the Saints are not a team that I expect to be, a contender next year, but they are a team that is not really positioned to go get a young quarterback, and they're also a team that has kind of been going after these veteran guys. And unlike the Colts, I feel like maybe they haven't learned their lesson yet, and they're just going to keep trying to go get these guys that can get them to squeak into the playoffs. The fact that, Derek Carr met with the Saints. This wasn't just that there were rumors of compensation. Like, he met with the team, and ultimately, him not accepting a trade to the Saints, I don't know that reflects that he doesn't want to go there. More so that it might reflect, why would you want to cost your future team any sort of compensation when you can just go there? Like,
that's a fair point. I didn't even think that through.
Like, even if it's a 5th-round pick or a 4th-round pick, you can just say, how about you release me and I will go there, and they will still have that 4th or 5th-round pick and maybe get me a player to work with. So I would bet on the Saints right now just because they're the only team we've had him linked to. But Jets wouldn't surprise me like crazy. They are now linked to a bunch of quarterbacks, which we'll talk about here in a second. Panthers have made some great coaching hires. They are building a juggernaut coaching staff. They brought in Jim Caldwell today. Just a bunch of household names now up and down, like even as just offensive and defensive assistants. I've really never seen anything like it. Normally you go up and down a coaching staff and there's a bunch of guys who, quite frankly, you don't recognize their names. This is not the case for the Panthers. You've probably heard of almost everybody coaching every position on this team. So I think they are building something to maybe, jump or at least get over that hump, but I feel like they might do it with also a young quarterback. The Panthers I could see being a team to trade, the house and go up and get a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young. So we will see whether that comes to pass. Right now I'll go with Saints, Jets kind of right behind them, and then Commanders. I mean, who cares about the Commanders? That's quite a fit, isn't it, though? Derek Carr to the Commanders, just kind of go rot there, and it's just, gross. I don't know. I don't want that to happen.
I hope for Derek Carr that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so we'll see where Derek Carr ends up. From my understanding, Derek Carr can actually sign anytime. Like, before the rest of the free agents are able to sign, Derek Carr has a head start on them, so that could shake things up as well. So we'll see how this develops. But what I was saying about him being linked to the Jets, so the Jets hired former Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing as pass game coordinator. The Titans had fired him right after the conclusion of their season. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs. So Todd Downing worked with Derek Carr as quarterbacks coach and then offensive coordinator with the Raiders from 2015 to 17. But Downing also has connection with Ryan Tannehill coming directly from the Titans. This Jets coaching staff now has connections to so many different guys that they could go after. Like, basically every seemingly available quarterback. You've got Robert Saleh as the head coach, who has connections with Jimmy G that we've talked about a few times on this podcast. And then you've got Aaron Rodgers, them just bringing in Nathaniel Hackett. So they've got that connection as well. We'll see if they can bait him in better than the Broncos did with Nathaniel Hackett as their head coach. So many possibilities for the Jets here, which is why I feel like they are going to end up with one of these guys. I don't know which one it's going to be. I don't think they know which one it's going to be, especially with Aaron Rodgers needing to complete his darkness retreat first before he even knows what he wants to do with his future. But it is just very interesting that now the Jets are bringing in so many guys that have feasible connections to quarterbacks that would, maybe probably get them into the playoffs and maybe win a few games, because if they could just get better quarterback play than Zach Wilson, which is not a high bar, I think this can be a very, very good team. You got both rookies of the year on each side of the ball. So I don't know who they end up. Maddie, do you have an inkling on who they end up with? I'm still going Jimmy G. I'm just going to stick by my old prediction.
I think Jimmy G would be a really, really good fit for that offense. And not to mention the team. First of all, Jimmy G's used to taking crap. And so that New York media isn't going to be any sort of sweat to him. The only thing I can think that would derail that would be if Aaron Rodgers said, I want to go here. And then that's kind of tossed to the side. Who are you going to take, Aaron Rodgers or Jimmy G? Of course, you're going to go with Aaron Rodgers. But I sneaky feel like Jimmy G's might be their guy.
Yeah, I feel like he's a guy that is just kind of perfect for them. I mean, all they need is above average quarterback play. You've got a great defense. You've got very, very exciting offensive weapons there with Garrett Wilson and hopefully a healthy Breece Hall next year. Just a well-built team overall. All they need is a quarterback that's not going to shoot them in the foot. And Zach Wilson came with a loaded gun every Sunday shooting himself in the foot. I mean, we had Plaxico Burress constantly. It was not great.
Yeah, and I honestly, in my opinion, feel like he would be a much better fit than Aaron Rodgers. Just because with Aaron Rodgers, you get the ego, you get the bad leadership, to be honest with you. I think that Aaron Rodgers might be a problem in New York. But I think Jimmy G could come in. He's one of those guys that would fit into a system. Like, he's been friends with those guys for years. And that connection wouldn't have to develop. He wouldn't those receivers wouldn't have to prove themselves up until the middle of the season. He would just come in and it would be a good fit.
Yeah, I think there would probably be a level of stress for the rest of the Jets team if Aaron Rodgers comes in. It's just a high pressure situation, especially because Rodgers wants a ring. Before he retires, he wants a ring, and going to the Jets would be crazy to say this. Going to the Jets would actually help him potentially do that, but that's a lot of pressure on those guys. So I don't know. After all the rumors with, not rumors, but reports that he was not treating his rookie receivers all that well, I don't know if him going to another team with a ton of young talent would necessarily be the best fit, but we will see. For now, sticking by the Jimmy G prediction, I think it's a great fit. This may be a little bit of a shorter pod than usual. We're coming up on, it looks like, the 37-minute mark, and we're already at our viewer questions. Guys, one thing I do want to say to all our loyal viewers, obviously, the NFL season is over. So we are going to be covering all the rumors, all leading up to draft stuff. But one thing you guys can expect that we just don't have this week is guests. We're going to try and make a concerted effort to get some guests in here that you guys may know, that you may not know, introduce you to some new personalities, get their thoughts on this past season, upcoming season, anything else. Just talk to them about whatever, because we got to fill this hour somehow, and there are no more games to talk about. So we are going to try and do our best to get you some guys in here, guys and girls that are, interesting to talk to and have some fun throughout this offseason. But first things first, this episode, viewer questions. On the same topic, sort of, who you got leading your power rankings for next season and who will be last? So we're looking at top and bottom here. We've made our Super Bowl predictions. I mean, Chargers, Eagles are my Super Bowl prediction. I feel like very top of the league. I don't know how you don't have the Chiefs there.
You have to, yeah.
So I think if you wanted, a few teams at the top, I think the Chiefs, the Eagles, and I'll give you a number 3. Give me the Bengals. For clarity here, by the way, my Chargers prediction is sort of they need to make a leap thing. I don't actually think they're a top 3 team as of right now. I need to see that first. But right now, those are the 3 teams. I think Chiefs, Eagles, Bengals are sort of my big 3.
I'm actually going to go Chiefs, Eagles, Dolphins. I want to say the Bengals, but I think that the league is kind of starting to figure out the Bengals, and they're going to have to do something drastically different coming into next season to be able to be as successful as what they were the past 2 seasons. But they have the talent, so we'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, and this is also no intentional shade to the 49ers, who feel like they live in the NFC Championship game. Us not picking them, at least me not picking them, is nothing personal. They're just kind of outside that top 3, in my opinion. Losing DeMeco Ryans, losing your defensive coordinator is going to be an adjustment. And the quarterback situation, look, I love what Brock Purdy looked like this year. We don't know what it's going to look like when teams have a full, off season of being able to game plan for Brock Purdy and kind of lock down on his tendencies and such. I hope it doesn't change much. He looked past the eye test with flying colors, but I think there may be a little tiny bit of uncertainty with their quarterback situation and how it's going to perform next year, enough to where I'm just not putting them at the very top 3. But I don't expect it to be a crazy big difference. I still think he'll be good. Just something to keep an eye on. And as far as last, okay, see, this is where it gets interesting. Like, who is going to be the worst teams? Who is going to be holding the number 1 and 2 and 3 picks in next year's draft? I honestly haven't given this too much thought yet. Trying to look up and down because these teams that are at the top of the draft this year, maybe I'm over optimistic. I'm hoping that the Texans and the Bears won't be there. I'm excited to see what they can do with, revamped coaching staffs and draft picks and such. But who's your first thought for worst teams in the league next year?
Colts and Cardinals.
So Cardinals came to mind. Colts, I like the Colts as well. I like your Colts pick as well because I feel like I said, if they go with a guy like Will Levis and they don't get a great quarterback, then I don't know.
What are they going to do?
I don't
honestly. They have nothing good to fall back on.
Even if you like Will Levis as a prospect, and again, I'm no prospect evaluator, I'm no scout. Even if you like Will Levis as a prospect and think he can work out, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out in year 1. It's going to take some developing. That's one of the biggest things about Will Levis right now is he needs to be developed. The numbers are not there right now.
And when you look objectively at their offense and defense, neither one of those units are cohesive at all. And so it's just going to take a lot of work. It's not like they're halfway there or they have one really good strength. I mean, they have a running back, and that's about it.
Yeah, Colts, Cardinals, I think those are good picks. I think you also need to take a good hard look at the NFC South and just figure out which, if any, of these teams are going to end up with quarterbacks because right now, season started tomorrow, right? Yeah, obviously it doesn't, and there's plenty of off-season movement that's going to happen. But season starts tomorrow. The starting quarterbacks in that division are Kyle Trask. I believe Matt Corral for the Panthers is the only quarterback under contract. Saints, I don't know, Taysom Hill, and Falcons, Desmond Ridder. There's a lot that needs to happen in that division for every team for those teams to stay out of the basement. The Panthers, we already talked about. I think a lot of optimism just on both sides of the ball. Hopefully they can find a quarterback to push them even possibly into the playoffs. But the other 3 teams, I think, are at a great risk of being one of the worst teams in the league.
I feel like the Falcons, I'm not worried about. I think Falcons are going to end up in the middle of the pack, yeah. Okay. Especially what we saw this past season, they should have been at the bottom.
Yeah,
and they weren't.
This is true.
Consistently, Arthur Smith somehow, even though he pissed all of us off, somehow he ended up winning games. And I'm not super concerned. I liked what I saw from Desmond, at the end of the season. So I'm not as concerned about them. I don't think they're going to be anything spectacular, but I don't think they're going to be bottom 5 at all.
I think that's fair. I think in my mind I got too carried away with the quarterback situation just because I feel like they're not going to go in with Desmond Ridder, but I also don't see the obvious alternative. I mean, we've had these vague Lamar rumors, but that's going to take a lot to actually make happen. I don't know that they're a team that's going to make a big splash and try and go up in the draft. Although if people are projecting the Panthers to do it, I guess there's no reason why the Falcons couldn't do it. They're right next to each other at what I believe the 7 and 8 spots in the draft right now. So wouldn't surprise me. I feel like, I don't think it's bold to say one of the NFC South teams is going to have a top 3 draft pick next year. I don't know which one. Could be the Saints, could be the Bucks, could be the Falcons if things go horribly wrong. I don't think it'll be the Panthers, but that's kind of where we're at. Colts, Cardinals, Bucks for sure. Colts, Cardinals, and one of those teams. Book it. That's our top 3 for the draft next year.
And one of those teams. I love it. Yes.
Yeah. So we will see how that pans out. And then another question, Madi, I don't know what your expertise is going to be in this realm, but we got a non-NFL question here. Who is your top 4 in the NBA and Final 4 for March Madness? So top 4 in the NBA, I have some thoughts here as I sit here in my Denver apartment. The Denver Nuggets, who are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference by a solid margin, by the way, by 5 games. I think the Denver Nuggets are your future NBA champions. Call me biased because I am. But I mean, they have the second best record in the NBA behind only the Boston Celtics. I think the Final 4 that we're going to be sitting here with at the end of the NBA season is going to be the Nuggets versus let's go with the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference because they just traded for Kevin Durant because of course they did. They couldn't just let me have my time. And then in the Eastern Conference, Celtics versus, I guess let's just go with the Bucks. I have no reason to think that the Bucks won't get back there. The Sixers just choke every year, so I'm not going with them. The Cavs are somehow the 4 seed. I don't know how that happened. So this is where we're at with the NBA. I'm just kind of don't get me wrong, I follow the NBA very, very closely, but I'm kind of acclimating it to being my main sport, the main sport that's like going on right now. And just seeing these standings are kind of crazy. But no, that's my final four for the NBA. Nuggets, Suns, Celtics, Bucks. Maddie, any strong feelings otherwise?
I'll just give you my top four. So 1, Celtics. I have 2nd, the Bucks. You're not going to like this. 3rd, 76ers. Oh. Although I do agree that they do have high choke potential. And then I actually have Cavs at 4, just because they surprised me this year. Honestly, I didn't expect that at all, and they've consistently gotten better. Each week we see improvement. Even I've watched them go back-to-back 2 days apart from games, and they've significantly improved. So I'm excited to see what they do this next little home stretch. But for sure, that's what I have. So Celtics, Bucks, 76ers, and Cavs.
All right, top 4 teams in the NBA right now, all out of the Eastern Conference. No respect to the West. Wow, none. Rude. All right, and then second part of that question, final 4 for March Madness. So I think I've mentioned this before, that college basketball actually is my second favorite league outside of the NFL. As a UConn guy, I mean, it's kind of hard for it not to be. It's the one sport that I had in my state growing up was UConn basketball, because the only professional team we have is the Connecticut Sun WNBA team, and we didn't have them my whole life. So NCAA, I'm kind of reacclimating now to figuring out who's good outside of just the Big East. I've watched every UConn game, so I know very well all those teams. And we'll talk more about this as we get closer to March Madness, just because I do love it. But for right now, my very early, way too early Final Four, we don't even have regions, so maybe these teams will be in the same region and it won't be possible. Give me UConn, because duh. Give me UConn, Alabama, Purdue, and 4th team. I don't want to go too chalk. I already got the number 1 and number 3 teams in the AP Top 25 in here. So Bama, Purdue, and then give me Gonzaga. I'll take Gonzaga. Gonzaga needs to.
You never go wrong with Gonzaga.
Gonzaga needs to finish something off. I mean, they actually haven't been as strong in the WCC this year as they have been in the past. They lost to St. Mary's early in the year, who is damn good themselves. They're just right behind them in the ranking. So that's my 4 for now, but I will give a much more informed Final Four after we get through, or at least get into, the conference tourneys, which will be happening in a little under a month, and I'm excited for. Maybe we'll have an off the bench bracket pool, because that'd be a good time. We'll absolutely get into some of that. So, guys, it feels crazy to say that the NFL season is over. I want to thank everybody listening for coming with us on this journey. We kind of popped into the podcast world, a little ways into the season, and you guys jumped on the train, did not let it pass you by, so we appreciate that. We're going to keep this going all throughout the offseason. Like I said, more guests and such, but I honestly, as of right now, I don't know exactly content-wise, like how this is going to take shape. We're always going to cover the NFL headlines, but how much, NBA, college basketball, even MLB are we going to get into? We'll see. You guys let us know what you want to hear, and we will do our best to make that happen. But for now, just look forward to all of the NFL being covered as usual. Anytime anything major happens, you will hear our thoughts on it. And on top of that, guests, and more guests of all shapes and sizes. So I'm actually excited.
You want to have on. Yeah. Our DMs are open. If you leave us a review with who you want, we will work hard to get that, because the reviews, the rating, all of that helps us.
Yes. And one thing that I have to remember as well, honestly, guys, no request is too crazy. I mean, don't go for like Beyonce, but athletically, sports world wise, we can at least try to get, a lot of athletes out there and have a reasonable chance of doing so. So this podcast is definitely going to take a different shape in the weeks ahead, but I'm excited to see what it turns into.
I would love for you guys to just go ham and get somebody that Brandon's made fun of all season. I just want to be a part of that little awkward moment that we're going to have in this little chat room.
Let's not get Kyle Pitts on the podcast. Here's the thing. I think it'd be incredibly interesting, just because the odds that Kyle Pitts has no clue who I am are very, very high. So, it would just be an awkward tension of all of our podcast listeners and viewers and me and you knowing what has happened this whole season. And Kyle's just going on the podcast like, what's up, guys? What's up? I'm just like, I know it's not your fault, and I'm not actually mad at you, but God damn it. So, yeah, hey, look, maybe we'll get Kyle Pitts on the podcast. Stay tuned. But we will see what happens here in the next few weeks. I'm excited for it. But for now, we will let you guys go. Happy belated Valentine's Day. Maddie, anything else you want to say before we head out?
No, we'll catch you guys next week.
Yes, be sure, follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff, and we will see you guys next time.